One of the questions that we get is, how does vocabulary affect reading skills? It seems kind of like an obvious answer, but there's actually a lot that goes on there. When we process a word, what's really interesting is our language centers of our brain don't actually all talk to each other, and they're not separate. We actually have, the way we deal with language is through sensory inputs and motor outputs. So, our ear connects to the part of our brain, and when those work together, we get the sound of the letters in the word. And then when our eyes see the page and our hand writes it and we see those letters, then we get the representation that put together can, create meaning. There's so much that goes on as far as all of those things needing to connect, and they don't connect just together. They have to go through senses. And so when you think about just knowing what a word means, there's so much more to that. They have to understand how to pronounce the word, because that will help trigger what that word is that they may already know in their verbal vocabulary, but may not be able to recognize when they're reading because they can't pronounce it correctly and they aren't familiar with the word, how it looks. So for example, when we take the word cat, they have to understand what C-A-T, each of those individual letters say. They have to be able to understand that, because they know that A has more than one sound, and they've got to differentiate which sound it is, put those all together and blend them together, and then connect with, oh yeah, that's that little furry thing that runs through my house. They have to connect all of that. What was really interesting is they've discovered that depending on the word's meaning, it's stored in different areas of our brain as far as word meaning for vocabulary. So for example, if the word is a noun, it's stored next to the visuospatial areas of our brain, and if it's a verb, it's stored to the motor. What would actually, take for us to do that word, create that action. And so the brain has to find all of that, connect the sounds and the visual representation of the word, and then connect it to the meaning. Well, we tend to skip over that because vocabulary, having a strong vocabulary base, is the precursor to reading comprehension. So we know that. But a lot of teachers just think, well, if they just know the word, what it means, and just practice it in definition. But it's word usage is based on context, and they need to connect that sound and that visual representation to the meaning all at the same time, because then it's stored in all the correct areas of the brain. If they're and that happens through doing all that sensory input simultaneously and the motor output all together in real time. So when they work on that and then add the meaning to it, then it creates this vocabulary web in their brain that creates an easier retrieval and more places that it's stored that they can pull from, so it's not just a certain situationally based according to if they just see the definition or in this one particular story that they're reading. So we've just got to kind of expand our thinking, because vocabulary isn't just enough to teach the definitions, and all of those components that are important need to come into play, so that they're connecting all of that with the meaning. That creates this foundation that they'll recognize wherever. And of course, when that becomes an automatic process and they have a stronger vocabulary, then their reading comprehension improves, and that's the biggest thing that we're looking for.